Yeah, it was really hot. I'd be like,
Wait, so you do what? I'll tell you this.
Well, like
I bet it would
It's
go
not
magic.
raw.
The worst combination, yeah,
I'm
all
not
the
the type
brains.
of guy to
No, because that's not.
this is getting a bit like that. You gotta just do
Like,
like
that's
one
happening
thing,
often.
so I feel bad about it.
Happens the best.
Just do one thing. See that?
It sounds like it's not great.
No,
All right, everyone, well, thank you for joining today. I know that it was difficult getting here. I'm completely soaked, didn't dress for the rain. I thought, it doesn't rain down here, it rains in San Francisco, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, well, thank you for being here. This is gonna be a very exciting class today. We're gonna learn a lot about something we should know more about, something that is a rapidly evolving theme, and definitely we've got the right person here to lead us and guide us through this material. So let's be an active and engaged audience, as I will as well. So without any delay, let's welcome Freddie Seba.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Freddie.
Thank you. Everybody's so brave. I would be home. It's so bad out there. I was commending your professors, like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is crazy. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. Professor Ivan, thank you so much. So I'm gonna talk about GenAI ethics today. So let me just, this is what I'm thinking. This is the main theme, is how do we go about engaging in this technology? By the way, I'm a faculty at USF, so I was told I can treat you as my students, so get ready for a fun experience. So how do we go about this technology that is nascent, that is new, that we don't know what it does, how it does it, and how do we go for you to engage with it once you get your jobs, once you start advising others? How do you build on top of it if the rules are not clear? And I'm not talking technical, I'm not gonna talk technical. I'm gonna talk how do you use critical thinking with the tools we have today, knowing that every week it's gonna change. How do you engage with this technology? So this is what I'm thinking, and again, we're gonna keep it very brief, fun. I'm gonna put you on the spot, which I like, so we're all gonna learn from each other. So I'm here to learn from you too. So I'm gonna tell you who I am, trying to answer the question of, is this a fad? Hopefully you guys know it's not. We talked a little about how we use the technology, what are the challenges, and what do other organizations do? What are the framework? What are this busy stuff out there? So next time you pick up your Twitter, you pick up your paper, you get an email, you kind of step back and say, okay, this is the way I should be talking and thinking about it. And we're gonna give you a little tour of how 3 of the largest players in this new technology that are fighting to dominate it, i.e. the US, Europe, and China, how do they go about thinking about this technology, and how are they developing software on this technology? And at the end, hopefully, we have a case study, 2 case studies, and then we trying to peel the onion. And the idea is here to use some of the tools you have to interrogate it. So about me, so as I mentioned, I'm a faculty at another Jesuit university, a sister university. I've been there for 8 years. I'm the program director of a master's in science in digital health informatics, which is where medicine and technology collide. Besides that, I've been fortunate to have an MBA from Yale, an MA in policy from Stanford, and I'm a student too. I'm doing my doctorate degree as we speak, and I'm done with my classwork. So I'm writing my dissertation, of course, in GenAI ethics. And I'm a practitioner too, so I do both. I've run several startups, sold some of them, run to the ground others, crash and collapse, and I've taken refuge in pretty large corporations, Japanese corporations, European corporations. So I've been around and kind of helped me understand how other people think, other cultures, other leaders think, which inform the way I teach. So going back to our question is, how do we go about thinking about this technology?
Freddie, sorry to interrupt. Before you go on any further, can I ask you to define for us, especially me, the word generative in the AI? Like just from an expert in this, what does that word mean, and how is this new from talking about AI for 20 years that we've been talking about?
Great question. So AI has been with us for 60, 70 years. I mean, computing has been around for a long time. AI has gone cold, hot for a long time. Most of us who do data science, who do traditional coding, traditional data science, up to 2 years ago, we all used to use AI to predict. So we'll get all this data, i.e., Amazon will get all of our data and will recommend us what do you want to buy. Netflix will know all your secrets and will recommend you what you should be watching. So AI, the way we envisioned it before fall 2022, it was a predictive tool, not exciting at all. You know what goes in, you know what happens in these models, and you know what comes out. So you can go back and forth and trace it. No magic. It's not, as you mentioned, doesn't generate anything. It's just analytics. Goes back to data, analyze it, synthesize it, give us results. We go back, we can trace it, we can open the hood and see what happened there. So this is AI. This is machine learning. This is all of that. Fall 2022, with ChatGPT being the first one, there was, not to go too technical, there was this breakthrough. There is a paper out there, written here in our beautiful Silicon Valley, that said, look, there is something about paying attention. So there is a pretty good article, way too technical for me, that says, to the extent that we think different about these models, we might be able to get this technology to the next step. So this is the whole explosion of moving into the technology called Transformers, which I love the Transformers movies, but it has nothing to do with that. It's more about a way that you can use an AI, especially starting on vision, to figure out how do you follow and predict numbers or predict words based on the words that go in. So AI has been established for a long time, has been regulated. We all use it. I've used AI for over 10 years, doing all kinds of things from in financial services. I was part of a team that would look at millions of transactions, people using their credit cards and trying to figure out, is it your credit card? Is that you? Is what you buy make sense? So we go about looking at data and we start tweaking the models, which is called reinforced learning. So we'll tell, hey, this looks legal. Next time you see it, that's okay. So this is a pretty established AI. Now generative now threw us all crazy because we know what goes in, we have no idea what happens inside, and what comes in the other side, it's hard to know what is gonna come. So it is a new technology. We all gonna need to learn it, especially you guys need to learn it, because all the jobs, because all your life, because we are already part of the revolution as students, as brothers, sisters, boyfriends, girlfriends, we are part of that as consumer of all these technologies. So I know, especially universities have been very scared. And it's like, oh, don't use it, you're cheating, right? Because people don't understand it. So does that make sense? So when I talk here generative AI, I'm talking about that specific technology that started or started a long time ago because it's been built on top of each other, on top of all this body of research, but exploded with ChatGPT. And we know, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges that there are. So that's where the job opportunities for all of you are, for the growth opportunity for all of you are. And the good news is, it's brand new. So anybody who's been doing coding for 20 years, guess what? You guys can catch up pretty quickly because those skills are not exactly what's needed to do GenAI solutions, GenAI, whatever you want to build on top. So suddenly it got liberated. So going back, generative AI, when we talk about here, is that type of AI technology that basically generates things that have nothing to do with what we need, that needs bunch of data. See, in the example I gave you, that one of the companies that I work, we already own the databases. We will see all the transactions. We will go to Visa, we'll go to MasterCard, we'll go to the bank, we'll go. So we're in this container, if you will. I did an application with cancer, looking at very specific cancer, looking at what type of issues the person experiences, what are the side effects, what are the best practices, what are the clinical trials. See now, but we put it in a little container because it was a universe. Again, we knew what it was in, we knew what happened inside and what it came out. Now, we spent 2 years building that. Now, in a week, you can build something much, much better, cheaper, without knowing any coding. Okay? So questions on generative AI. And of course, you have visuals and you have podcasts, you have all these crazy things that, are being used with this technology. So hopefully, questions, comments? Yes, you're about to ask a question. What's your name?
Nina.
Nina.
Yes.
Yes, concerns, questions.
Oh, I didn't really have a question yet, but
Not bad?
I guess one was you said it's not that hard to catch up now, so then what skills are now being used when it comes to generative AI versus what was originally there?
So now that is built, see people who are building what's called the foundational models, the Googles, the Metas, the Mistrals, they need to know a lot on the coding. Using that technology, the things that we all gonna use, because you're gonna need to use it for your jobs, for sure, no matter where you end up, you're gonna need to use it. We need critical thinking. So we need to understand the rules. We need to understand what they're good at and what they're not. We need to understand the ethical framework, because legislation is pretty bad. So you are building something without rules. So you need critical thinking. You need to know what is it that you want to get out of it. You need to know what the tool is not good for. And you need to know what it's supposed to give you. Which, let me just rephrase that. One of the three key things, and we're going to talk more about it, is because there is who has heard about hallucinations? So we all know, those of us using it, and again, there's only one way to get good at this tool. Who can tell me what's the best way to get good at it? Yeah, use it every single day for everything you do. Assuming you're not getting in trouble with your professors.
We have some guardrails here,
Yeah,
but yeah, we should all download the app by
yeah,
the time you leave here today.
yeah.
Sure,
Use it, break it. Look, I use, I don't know, half of my day I'm doing stuff with it. Anything and everything, that's the only way you're gonna know what works, what doesn't, what's good and what's bad. Did I answer your question? Sorry. So I asked ChatGPT long time ago, what are your issues? Think about this. I went to the model I want to investigate, said, tell me what your problems are. And this is ChatGPT, that was a 3.5, 2 shots, that mean I asked twice. So you're gonna hear that lingo. So that means he gave me one answer, didn't like it, asked him more things, became 2 shots. 3 shots, 4 shots. So if your professor is not listening, the way you don't get detected, you want me to tell you how? He doesn't listen. So if you go several times with one of these tools, it's gonna basically be harder to track. So if somebody who does 5 shots, and it makes sense if you think about it, the patent department just released a pretty huge piece last week saying, can you patent what a GPT can produce? And the answer is no. Can we, if we add value, can we patent what it comes up with? And the answer is yes. So, because you need to be a human being to get a patent, right? That is not a human being. So in theory, whatever all these nice designs or copyrighted, there's no way you're gonna get it. But if you engage, go back and forth, suddenly the product is yours, which is different. So again, going back to the beginning, how do you go about interrogating and using this technology if the rules are evolving? Does that make sense? So if you're writing an essay, assuming your professor lets you, I let all my students use it. On the contrary, I ask them to use it with one condition, 2 conditions, 3. 1, cite it, tell us where you got it. B, tell us how you got it, because we all wanna learn, because this thing is changing every single day. And be careful, be mindful of all the biases and all the issues. We need to engage with this technology. Most students are engaged with this technology. Faculty, we are behind, we as a group, because all kind of things that we can talk about. So that's what ChatGPT told me, and just keep in mind what he told me a year ago. Biases, misinformation, privacy, manipulation, user content, autonomy, and unintended consequences. Right? So why don't we go around? What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah, what do you think, what is bias? If you think about a model that can do all kind of things without knowing. So, and again, there is no right or wrong question. So if you tell you these models have a bias issue, what's the first thing that comes to mind? So let me give you help. No right or wrong question. Is technology neutral? No, right?
No.
I mean, if I get a hammer, I could fix something, right? But I could inflict pain in somebody. So if you assume the hammer is a technology, it's not neutral, depending on who uses it. So if you think about bias, if you think about GenAI as a tool, so don't you think whoever owns the tool could say, well, I just want people who look like me, or well, I just want my friends to benefit, or well, things that I just don't know, that I don't know. Do you think that's gonna influence the way that hammer is used?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Makes sense, right? I drive a car. It's a technology. Is it neutral? Well, if it's somebody drunk driving, can kill somebody, right? Can do a lot of harm. So we need to think about this as a technology that has all kind of biases. One of the issues as a society that we have is there's 5 companies who own this technology until last week. Now, remind me to throw something there, which is the usual suspect, the Googles and the Metas and the OpenAI, which is owned by Microsoft, the usual suspects. And I know this is a Jesuit school, so social justice is very important. So that's problematic for society. Why? Because you don't want that much power concentrated in anybody, government, nobody should have that much. And that's the foundation of this country, right? So here you need to be concerned, this is for everybody. A, who's using it? What are their incentives? Meta, my incentives is to sell advertising. So guess what I'm gonna do with my tool? Like it or not, unintended or not, most likely I'm gonna align it with my system. Guess if I'm a Chinese company, what I have a regulator that is big in controlling masses, controlling messages, whatever. What do you think is gonna happen with technology? And then the other piece, and then we move, what's your name? Kaylee. With Kaylee, on the next one, I'll give you a couple of seconds for you to look at it. The other issue is, this, remember when Professor asked me what's the difference between GenAI and AI? I told you my example. AI uses a set of data that is mine, that is in a container that is specific. GenAI is trained with everything you guys, all of us, have written. All the papers in the world, everything has been fed into these monsters. So guess what happens with the outcome? I mean, is social media toxic? Anybody have seen trollers and all the stuff going on? So that thing is being fed into systems. So what do you think is gonna happen? Think about that. If you do there are studies in healthcare, which I work a lot in healthcare, asking, okay, give me, with DALL-E, give me renderings of doctors. Who tells me what the renderings were? When women? No, I mean, doctors, half of the women are doctors. It's only men. So is that bias? Absolutely. Is it because the owners of DALL-E were using it to do something? No. In that case, it's because it's bringing all the biases we have as a society and influencing the outcome. Okay? Intended, unintended consequences bring us to bias. Misinformation. What do you think? What comes to mind?
I mean, I feel like you can get misinformation if you're like looking through numerous articles online, so it makes sense with like an AI function that they also are going to have misinformation because they're, like you said, they're being fed so much information. I thought it was correct.
And if I'm a bad actor, can I use this to create all kind of weird conspiracy theory and going against people that I don't like? Yeah. Thank you. Your name? Sure. So, what do you think privacy? What comes to mind?
I guess so they can like misuse things that people may output into AI. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So think about it. We just said this thing gets all the information in the world, process it, gets trained with the stuff we tell them. Chances are somebody's going to see what we're asking, what we consume. Most likely we're going to get databases from hospitals. And suddenly, insurance company going to look at it like, oh, this person has this issue. I'm going to deny an insurance to this person. So it creates a lot of privacy issues. Cool. Who tell me about your name?
Noah.
Noah, manipulation. What do you think?
I mean, kind of like you said, like whoever's controlling it can use it in a bad way, however they want.
In their cases, I mean, one of the big uses in healthcare is to get therapy. There are countries that have 2 and 3 million users. Forget about the US for a while. Using it for companionship. Guess what? There have been cases, and you guys have seen it, where people have basically done horrible things because they've been manipulated by these models, which is pretty crazy. User consent and transparency. Your name?
Olivia.
Olivia. What comes to mind?
I think about like when companies maybe use like chatbots, AI chatbots, but like if they don't disclose that and people don't know, then they might blindly like follow the advice that was given, thinking that it's coming from like a real person or a professional.
Yeah, so no transparency. They don't get my permission. Who owns my data? If you're in the US, you don't own it. I don't own my data. You guys get a check in the mail from Meta or from Google. I don't get a check saying, oh, thank you for all the information. There is a check. I don't. In Europe, and we're going to touch about it, you own your data. So if you say delete it, you got to delete it. If you make a decision based on me, on my data, you got to explain it. So here, we don't have that. And unintended consequences, your name? Marina. What do you think? What comes to mind? Unintended consequences of this technology that is a black box, that we don't know how it operates, that we don't know what comes in, how it processes, and what comes out.
I think that also goes hand in hand with number 6, like dependency. Like we don't really know how the consequences are like on our learning if we're depending on it too much. And we also don't really know like the future of AI, that might affect like people's jobs, and like if people are going to lose jobs because of AI, and that could be a really big consequence in the future.
Perfect. Concerns? So this is what ChatGPT told me that the issues are. So I tried to do this experiment, couldn't copy and paste, but a year later, ChatGPT, a better version, a paid version, told me exactly the same issues. That means in a year, with billions with B of dollars invested in training, the issues are still the same. So you guys need to get better at it. We talked about this. I asked ChatGPT, are you concerned about power concentration? And guess what? Yep, market dominance, political influence, global imbalance, data monopoly, which we see all the time. And this is, again, their tool telling me these are my challenges. So going back to our question is, it is a brand new, so are we clear that this is a new technology, right? 2 years old, which is great news for everybody sitting here. And I tell my students, this is the best time to be a student, the best time to get into the job market, because suddenly, again, all these people who've been doing coding for 20 years, you are, boop, right there. To the extent that you engage with the tool, you use frameworks, and you practice, you have a great shot to have a pretty good career. No matter where you go, if you go to a nonprofit too, if you go to wherever you go, you're gonna be more productive. I mean, this is a technology that it can liberate us, but can also enslave us. And I'm not saying Terminator, and I'm not saying, Skydeck, whatever it's called. I'm saying because, people who use this technology, they have different incentives. And their incentive is to make money. And sometimes, unfortunately, we are not on the top of the priority. So it's upon you to take the lead on this. So one of the things I keep doing all the time is I go and, because there is no laws, because the frameworks are evolving, because the technology is brand new, I try to see how do I get guidance on how do people use that. Why? Because big chunk of companies in the US, nonprofits, really all kind of are engaging, are using it because the benefits are huge. But they're doing this without clear rules. That could get you in trouble. So these are some of the key pieces that I wanted to discuss with you. Talk about what the White House, which just changed. So, but we're gonna talk about that and then what's gonna replace it. Europe, China, we are in California. So I say, okay, we are a progressive state with progressive laws, especially on privacy. So to the extent that I'm design or think with one of those, most likely I'm gonna get it right. Does that make sense? So you try to see the most strict rule, because think about, so, what's your name again?
Fina.
Fina? Question. What's the difference between a law in this context and an ethical framework or a moral framework?
Like a low point of a moral framework.
Yeah, easy. Hey, look at you. So the law is the minimum I'm supposed to do. Do not beat up your neighbor. Do not crash on. So that's the minimum. But there is a big thing on morals, ethics, whatever. So I want you to think about this technology on that. One thing is the law, but because that the law is going to catch up to what the technology is, but there's going to be a big time. To the extent that you understand that, you're going to engage quicker. And again, people who have been doing this for too long, they might not have the plasticity in your brain that you guys have. Very quick. I know it's going to go here because this is the right thing to do. Plus, there's nothing wrong with doing the right thing, but the law is going to catch up sooner or later. Does that
Freddie,
make sense?
that's a main theme in our class, by the way, the overlap of ethics and finance.
Okay.
That every so often we're learning about new scandals, new ethical lapses, new breaking of laws. And it seems that in finance, we can never catch up, and in fact, we can never anticipate. Usually, like laws and regulations come after we observe something, and then the market continues to change and shift, and we're never catching up. So actually, the purpose for this class is so that we can have a playbook to actually have successful careers in the field of finance.
Excellent. So here is not an accident. Again, my background is in fintech, financial services for many years. Healthcare is more critical because people die, literally, if you break one of these rules, one of these laws. So financial services, it is important, but here people die. And education, highly regulated. It couldn't be more regulated because we're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of minors that need protection. So if you can design against those as a baseline, in finance, there's a big way. So you're ahead of the game. And that is important, especially if you're designing products, especially if you're advising other people, because you know you have a floor and you have a ceiling, which could be good. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This was a pretty cool, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, a high-level guideline of how do we think about AI. It got repealed, like most of the laws are going to change, but there's a lot of things we can learn from it. So, and I'm going to show you a table that kind of compare everybody. So here, look at what it says. It's talking about some of the things we're doing, right? It's talking about unsafe, ineffective, or bias, right? And it goes specific. Algorithmic use in hiring and credit decisions, which is what you guys study here. So here, you're going to see the same themes over and over and over, which is something that I want you to keep in mind. And then I say, look, this law just got, like many laws, it's going to be rewritten, it's going to change a lot. And I say, where can I see guidance on what Congress is going to do at the federal level? So, good timing, this bipartisan AI task force that came up with a pretty long report, and I'll give you links. So if anybody needs to sleep at night and there's nothing in Netflix, highly recommend it. You're going to fall asleep. So if I look at what this bipartisan group in Congress came up with, it's not that far from what we've been talking about. So they're saying, look, we need to be pretty straightforward. We need to be ahead of it. They talk about AI has a big potential in quality of life, health, security, economic prosperity, and it talks about all the risks and imbalances that we talked about. So no matter where politically you are in the spectrum, it seems like the themes are coming up. So now it gives you a guidance how you think about that. And then we go to the Europeans, which they're pretty good at protecting privacy, protecting consumers in that sense. And they decided to have a different approach. They say, you know what, we're not gonna regulate all these tiny startups, these people doing all kind of little things because we have no time, no resource. But I wanna make sure we as a society keep an eye on people who can do a lot of harm. So they say, we're gonna focus on highly, what's called unacceptable risks. So anybody who's doing a foundational model, we're gonna keep an eye. What does that mean? Well, transparency, reporting, tell us every time you're gonna release a massive thing, because if it's gonna wipe out the whole country, we wanna know. So basically they're going for high risk to low risk. So see how it's different continent is thinking different about that? Is that unacceptable? What's your name again?
Andrew.
So is this an acceptable framework to think about it in finance?
Well, I mean, I guess this is like sort of like a VAR, but like instead of money, it's like, I don't really know what the risk measurement is, like what's considered unacceptable. I definitely think like right now the main risk is maybe the data side of things. Like how are they getting that data? And then like where are they storing it? Are they collecting that data with every query from users? So that's kind of my main
Okay, so I'll give you a risk. So do you think the subprime crisis you guys touched it here that wiped out millions of Americans' equity and their homes, that's a high risk product, right?
Well, yeah, but the VAR models didn't work for it because they didn't know how to.
They didn't understand the product, they didn't know the product even exists, whatever. So that's what they're trying to say, look, if it's something that is gonna impact key industries at massive level, we wanna make sure you report it and there's oversight and there's people outside. So, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. As you go minimal here, all of us developing startups and stuff, I mean, no need to get the government involved. So something to keep in mind. And of course, they have little frameworks on defining who are and what you do and what are the sanctions, which is pretty straightforward. And then we have our friends in China, which are competing too for domination. Everybody wants to control this technology. And similar that, all technologies, if the dominant nation states or kingdoms or tribes wanted to control, this is historically the same issue. So here, because the model, they're talking about pretty interesting stuff, which no matter where you are in the political spectrum, I think it makes sense. So, remind me your name?
River.
What do you think when somebody say content moderation?
That's a tricky one.
Okay.
I don't know. I think you can make the argument both ways. Let me just read what comes after this bullet. I would say, in general, some content moderation is probably good. I think when I hear that, I think in the context of social media platforms. I don't know exactly how it's applied to AI models, but I know with social media, to some degree, there's content that's very obviously illegal or harmful. But I think it's one of those pendulums that kind of swings back and forth, and it can swing too far in one direction. And I think the idea of introducing too much content moderation into AI gives me pause.
Yeah.
But
So it's not binary, right? There are a spectrum of grays there. So it's important, but it's kind of iffy to regulate.
yeah.
But it makes sense that somebody should do it. It could be a third party, it's not a government. So
Yeah.
the question is how we do it is a different issue. So training data, we talked about it. There is a pretty interesting thing which companies here in the US are talking, which is labeling of data. What does that mean? Who wants to take a shot at this? Remind me your name?
Sam.
So Sam, we said these are black boxes. It's a new technology, 2 years old. It goes everywhere, brings all kind of stuff, good stuff, bad stuff. Put it on this little shaker. We don't know what happened inside. We know, technically, I can explain it. I can just spend 2 hours. But we cannot break it and see, why did you make that decision of not approving this credit card to this person? There's no way you can do it. And then you cannot regulate what comes out. So are you with me so far? In the regular AI, you have your own data. You know where the data comes from. You can open the model and see exactly how you got there. And then you can see that what comes out here was the product of this and this. Easy. So if we don't know what's coming here, and we don't know what happened here, and we don't know what gets out, wouldn't it be helpful if you tag all the data that goes in? You're tagging, like putting a dog, you know, when dog you put one of those things, you can track them with your card. So now you know the data that goes in has a number, could be blockchain, get creative, goes inside and gets outside. Now you can track, you can have an idea what happened and where the data came from, because there is a tag. So you can look at the outcome, not knowing what happened inside. Say, look, all this data came from here, so you can track it back. So wouldn't it make sense to tag it?
It would make sense, but you don't want to mistag the inputs.
Yeah, so that's a challenge. So how do we go about doing a good job?
Could you train another model to tag it?
Yes, that's the way it's done. So that's the way you do it. You get another model to optimize for that specific function. But tagging makes sense. And Meta is talking about it. A lot of people are talking about it. If I don't know what happened inside, at least I can follow. You guys say follow the money, right? Financial services. Follow the money. Here we're saying follow the data, see where it came from, so we can kind of figure out what happened inside and how we tweak it. It's not only, I want to know what happened. How do I tweak it? If the output is biased against a group of individuals because religion, race, gender, whatever, I want to know that. Because if I'm a bank and I'm not giving loans for homes to people of certain group, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to get a multi-million-dollar fine from my regulator. Yes?
Don't you have to train the model that's training the model?
Yeah.
You get, so then, like, where does it
Yeah.
end?
Next time I come here, we do a class on agents, AI agents. That's a fascinating subject, which is what you do is you get each one of these agents is optimized to do something, and you have them going against each other. So this is optimized for efficiency. This one is for compliance. This one is moderation. So you go at them and you try to change the weights, i.e. the power. Oh, I don't want you to be too strict because I'm losing speed or I'm losing creativity. So you just tweak it. So see, you're up to something already. Cool.
But Freddie, sorry.
Yes.
Aren't we then just going back to regular AI? If we're trying to search for intuition and agents, aren't we kind of going back to AI as you described it, where we're trying to...
Your regulators want explainability. Your regulators want to make sure, they want to know when they audit you, they're going to see, okay, look, we did a random with regular AI. We looked at how many people apply to mortgages, and we see how many people got approved to those mortgages that bought their homes, and we look here, there is a bias. I think you are favoring PK, people who have, I don't know, men, woman, people of color, whatever is the designation. So if the regulator sees that, you're in trouble. So the regulator is gonna know, how did you make that decision here? So you gotta be able to explain to them. You cannot say, oh, I'm sorry, I have an GenAI here, it's making decision. You need to show that you have done your work. So to the extent that you tag it, you can say, look, you use normal AI, machine learning, what have you, to say, these are the applications we got, these are the scores we got, this is the approval rate, and that's why we have this. Our marketing is attracting different demographics. So you have a way to explain regulators that this is not something that you decided to do. I don't believe.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like sort of evolution.
Yes.
Because there's a big set of people that are whether it's coders or regulators or business owners, like founders in AI that don't care about the intuition. It's just like whatever the model says, hey, let's just do what the model says.
No. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. One of the rules with this technology, if nothing else, you guys remember when I live here, is there is a big rule with AI, which is GenAI. Trust, but verify. Always trust, because it's amazing what it can do, but verify. I do research with this machine. Sometimes it comes up with books and references and authors that don't exist. Let me repeat this again. I look at it and say, oh man, it makes sense. They don't exist. They just made it up. Why? Because GenAI, because there's something called, given the inference, they try to please you. Have you guys seen that? They try to please you because they get incentivized to be nice to you. So they're gonna make you happy. Think about the good thing and the bad thing about it. They're gonna make you happy. What that means is, whatever you ask them at some point, if you say, give me more references, give me more this, give me more that, at some point, it's gonna start making it up. And it's not called mistakes, it's called hallucinations. Because it's not just a mistake. A mistake is easy to say, oh, 2 + 2 = 5. That's a mistake. Coming up with names of books that don't exist, giving you a different way to get to your home that there's no way to get there, that means it's so probable, but it's not real.
So let me just announce a pivot along those lines. Our midterm is going to be a remote. So we're gonna be synchronous, right? We're not gonna be in class anymore, closed notes, right? Why be closed when we can open it up? But, there's a cautionary tale here about don't fall into the trap of hallucinations, right? We gotta know, you're the intelligent one, so we gotta be able to scrutinize the results.
I would clap.
We're all growing here, we're all growing today, right?
That's great. All right, I know what
That feels
going
good,
through.
right, everybody? Right? Take home final, take home midterm, right?
Take back the finals take home too, right?
Well, we'll see how this one goes, but in that direction.
It's called reinforced learning.
Exactly.
Reinforced learning means you're gonna see how it goes. If you guys do well, that behaviors get reinforced. That's the way these models get trained. That's why those models trying to please us. Because if we say thank you, yep, good job, say, oh, I did my job, it goes again. Neural networks, that's the way they work. Human beings actually are behind cleaning all that data. California, easy. They say, we're not gonna regulate you back then, but carrots and stick. If you wanna sell your AI to me, California being, if it were a country, last I checked, would be the 6th largest economy in the world. If you wanna sell to me, you gotta make sure that you have all these rules in place. I'm not gonna enforce it, but you won't be able to sell to me. Interesting, huh? Carrots and sticks. In education, it's pretty straightforward. Remind me your name?
Andrew.
Andrew?
Maya.
Maya, do you wanna read for us?
Sure. U.S. Department of Education, AI Future of Teaching and Learning Recommendations. Emphasize humans in the loop, assign AI models to a shared vision for education, design using modern learning principles, prioritize strengthening trust, inform and involve educators, focus R&D on addressing context and enhancing trust and safety, develop education-specific guidelines and guardrails.
So what pops there? What do you think is weird there? Anything you don't like? Anything that makes no sense? The first one is saying involve, make sure that critical decisions, there is a human in the middle. Why? Because we don't trust machines. We don't trust humans, but machines that we don't know how they act. The other one is telling you, this is a tool. Our vision is we need to educate students. So this is a tool. Make sure it's aligned. Trust. Why is that important? It says prioritize strengthening trust. Why is it important?
Well, like you mentioned, AI can come up with things that are just completely false. So developing a sense of trust in the tools makes it more able to be used by people that maybe don't.
Yes. So you want to keep going and help her? She's like, oh, remind me your name?
Micah.
Mike. So inform and involve educators. Who are the educators? Experts. Bankers in banking. Doctors in healthcare. Why do we want to involve the experts who are going to use it, who know the context?
You probably need someone to oversee.
Yeah. They're going to be the users, right? We believe in user-centric design and human-centered design. So if they're going to be the guys using it, you might as well get them involved because they know how to, what is it that we do. How about this one? Again, trust again. Context. What does that mean? Do I run this model in a rural area with no internet? No, right? So context. Do I run the same models in a K-12 here in a top university in Silicon Valley? All right, so context is important. And the last one, what do you think about that one? Does it make sense? Guardrails that are specific to education. Does it make sense? Yeah. Can I do it with a financial product? Why not? Change the context, trust. It's not learning, it's whatever transaction you do, the vision of your organization and finance. Why not? So again, all of these make sense. I'm not going to spend time. This is one of the toughest ones because people die. Healthcare. So if I can go against, but look at the words here: transparency, explainability, intelligibility, responsibility, accountability. Is there anything there that you say, oh no, this is way too crazy? It makes sense, right? So I think this is a nice framework. Start with the transparent use of data and ask all the things that we say will be asked for consent. Could my data be sold? So these are concerns that we should have as users, as patients, as bank customers, that we need to build into all our products. So the question is, so what? Are there any clues? And hopefully by now it's clear what this ethical framework with this nascent technology is. So if you look at the US, look, it doesn't matter which party affiliation you have, you're thinking privacy, bias, transparency. China, you talk about data security, content censorship, because it makes sense, that's what they're optimizing, and surveillance, you want to make sure that you're on top of it. You look at Europe, bias, transparency, and privacy. So now I can, if I design, if there's anything that I come out with, the way I think about this, you can get a clue from these guys. I know this is a lot of data, so I say, okay, let's put it one next to each other. I just want you to look at the bottom of this one, the ethical consideration, which is, the purpose here is not to ask you, do you know what China does, or that doesn't matter. What matters here is, how do you go about thinking on ethical considerations? So, who hasn't talked? So you wanna read this one? So this is US Congress. So let's call it White House or federal government. What are the ethical considerations?
Yeah, so they want to recognize the importance of ethical AI deployment and balancing innovation with potential risks.
Why? I mean, we're in Silicon Valley, right? Does innovation matter? Yeah, as a country now fighting for our lives against China, does it matter innovation? Can regulation kill innovation? So does it make sense that they're been focusing on that? Probably does. How about, so this is Congress, how about the previous administration? You wanna read it?
Sure, yeah. It's explicitly addressing data privacy, user rights, and the prevention of discrimination in particular.
Yeah, we talk biases, which makes sense. If we don't control the data, we know it's gonna discriminate like it or not. And how about the European Union? What are the ethical considerations?
They focus more on safety, the fundamental rights, and ethical principles, with specific provisions for high-risk applications.
We talked about it. You wanna make sure that Meta, Google, OpenAI are obeying the law, that you could be audited, that you're telling us every time you release a model, oh gee, by the way, we just released a model that could break into all the grids in the US and can shut down our power. Don't you think they need to tell regulators, look, this thing can take over a lot of things, so let's think about it. How about next one? How about the Europeans? Or did we do that? No, last one. China.
Yeah, they're emphasizing more adherence to their laws, prevention of discrimination, and respect for intellectual property and user privacy.
Which makes sense. So, if nothing else, as you can see, different ideologies, different cultures, different language, different incentives. Everybody's kind of going to the kind of the same lines. So you guys use the SWOT analysis. Who hasn't talked? You're hiding there. All right, do you want to take the threads of this table? So
for the bipartisan task force, they focus on the risk of inconsistent implementation across states and potential regulatory gaps.
yeah, so why is that? Because this is a federal law. Here, California does something, Texas does something, so they want to make sure. And for companies, banks, you guys see financial services, it's hard when some of these banks are regulated by state. It's very expensive to have laws on all of it. How about next one?
Without legal enforcement and risks being ignored.
Yeah, so guess what? Don't drink. Yeah. You're not supposed to drink in the dorm. Yeah. If there's no enforcement, do I really care? Most likely I don't. Right? Don't party. If there's no enforcement, ethics can go so far, but there gotta be way to enforce. How about the Europeans?
Overregulation could deter startups and small businesses.
Yeah, because we talked about it. And how about China?
Potential to suppress dissent and limit diverse AI applications.
Which for us, we care in this part of the world. We believe we care. Thank you. Who else is missing? Anybody who? Oh, very efficient. Everybody. All right. So this is a summary. So now let's give you, we're gonna do a case study after this. How much time, Professor, do we have?
We've got plenty of time.
Plenty of time, okay.
Another 20 minutes or so.
20 minutes. So let's just summarize this. And then what I would propose is break it in teams. I would say teams of 3. And we're gonna give you 15 minutes to look at it. And we're gonna go around, each one of you is gonna present. Does that make sense? So these are the challenges. So again, going back, there is AI, it's been there for a while. We've been using it in banking. I use it for over 10 years in banking. Healthcare, I use it all the time. Education, we're using AI ethics to make sure students use it. There's all this laundry list that came out of the challenges, but look at the opportunities. So we need to engage because the ecosystem is engaged. You guys, no matter what you want to do with your professional life, you need to engage because this is your, not future, this is your present. And this is the way you are gonna get ahead, understanding and applying it everywhere to the extent it's allowed. And there is punishment in case you get caught. Questions on opportunities, and I balanced it so it looks balanced. And I can come up with a longer list. But these are some of the things that kept coming up, which we need to be very careful, no matter which industry you are, no matter where you're gonna end up, in any part of the world you're gonna end up, this is key. And these are all the power that we can get. We can empower our families, our communities, our churches, our synagogues, whatever it is, using this technology. Because everybody's using it, so if you don't use it, they're gonna use it against you. So this is gonna be pretty nasty. And agents are gonna make the, we'll leave it for another day. Questions on challenges and opportunity?
Just quickly, how would you, slight pivot, how would you rank the application of AI today for those of us going into financial services versus driving a car or flying or using of the internet? Is it on that scale or is it just more of?
So we're not recording, right? So a bank I will not mention, which I used to be a senior vice president for many years, which I'm not gonna mention either. I've seen charts where we have all of our applications mapped out to OpenAI's or Microsoft's or Oracle's AIs. So every single product in banking is mapped out to GenAI, no AI, GenAI. Why? Because it makes tons of sense, because it's cheaper, because it's more effective in some applications. Call centers, gone. Most of the call centers, they're gonna be gone pretty soon. Stock, look at the stock of some of these companies, trash, everybody pivoting, because guess what? Remember, this is not a chatbot. I'm gonna give you a link next time. I'll send it with you. Comparing what a chatbot does and what an agent does, or GenAI does. Anybody can tell me the difference? Anybody here who has called customer service on the phone? How does that work? You call and say, if you want this, press 1. If you want that, press 2. Right? And then at some point, we just smash that thing. Right? So why does that happen? And that's traditional AI. Because to do that is hard. Why? Because you need to literally design a tree that says, if you want credit cards, click here. Okay, how many questions can you ask? How many permutations? So I've been in rooms that we have done walls just mapping the customer experience. And at some point, you're going to ask for something that they don't have it there. Guess what? The chatbot is not going to work. If you use your banking application, your chatbot can offer 3 products. Why is that? Because you had to map it. That's a chatbot. Traditional software, which you need to know what goes in and out. With GenAI, you don't need any of that. You get that thing loose in all your products. Say, ingest all of my database, ingest all the banks that have the info out there, and help the customer with this gear. So customer service is gone. Reports are gone. How long would it take an analyst to look at a company and decide whether to invest or not? Weeks. And high pay analysts. Guess now, it was a black rock that says 95% of what analysts do can be done with a GenAI.
So the key is, that's a theme that's come up in this class. The key is to be the human in that loop.
Yeah.
So be the analyst that can be 5 times faster, 10 times faster because you know how to do this. And obviously, be able to spot hallucinations and.
Yeah, so you need to know, so that's where your job is, if nothing else. And again, doesn't matter if you want to do a nonprofit, doesn't matter. You gotta be the person with the superpower. Because you wanna talk about gap, this is a massive gap that's gonna be. Because those people who do not get on board, do not manage. And again, you don't need any coding. You just need to work with it, to understand it, and to critically engage it. So customer service, analysts, credit scoring, writing reports, writing presentation, writing emails, all of that is AI. And look, and we have unintended consequences, which I haven't looked at the use cases in finance, but I was with some top CTO of one of the largest hospitals in California, and there is a big push in healthcare, because we go to a doctor and after the visit somebody needs to type, right, all this information. So the thesis was, well, if we can get the doctor outside the computer and send those emails, we're gonna save 5 minutes. So everybody's like, yeah, we're gonna save 5 minutes. That means doctors can work more, then they can see more patients, more money, yay. So they start doing pilots. Who tells me what happened? What was the outcome?
They didn't want to learn how to use it, and then it ended up taking more time.
Okay, a big chunk did not want to do it. Those are the people who basically are gonna lose. The people who did engage, because it was a pilot, what they realize is they don't save the 5 minutes. But guess what? Their scores, their patients love them now because they spend more time with the patient. Have you heard about bed manners? Doctors who are pretty good at what they do, but are horrible communicators. You are dying. You have this. Like excuse me? So the AI is helping them be more humans. Let me repeat that again. It's helping some doctors be more human. And that has given them time back, job satisfaction, so unintended consequences. And of course, now all the hospitals want to use it. Ambience technology, which I think in banking is going to happen. You go now, Microsoft here, they have the pilot not too far from here. You walk into a hospital and they have ambience technology. You talk to your doctor and the AI, the generative AI is listening, is writing everything, is inputting it, and is telling the doctor, who is still human in the loop, hey, this thing, have you thought about these issues? Have you thought about this? So it's helping the doctor be more efficient. So in banking is the same. The money you make is if you can sell more products to your same client, right? So it's hard to pitch too many products, but with the GenAI, looking at your data, looking at your reports, looking at your transactions, can build use cases that say, to the extent you get this hedging product, or this currency product, or this mortgage product, you can make this much money, boom. So the answer is, this is very pervasive. So there are gonna be people who know and are very good at it, and there are gonna be the people who unfortunately, and we as a society need to figure out how we train those people. Does that answer that question? So yeah, this is not a fad. All right, use case. So, and by the way, all of this is built with GenAI. If you wonder, I'm eating my dog food, so I use it all the time. Many shots, so I have a relationship with my GPT. So,
do you strictly use GPT or do you use other Gen AIs?
I use all kind of things. So I always trying to, and I encourage my students to use different ones that I do, so they can tell me how they work.
Are you gonna give us a list?
I'm happy to give you a list. I'll email it to you. It depends. I mean, so going back to the tool, it depends of what you use to. Depend of what I used to. I use different applications. If I want something more ethically concerned, more mindful, I go to one which is different than the one I want for speed or one for research. So why? Because each one is optimized for something different. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so, thank you.
Anthropic is a good one if you're looking for, make sure it's ethically aligned, make sure you have guardrails, whatever, but you're sacrificing other things. So you gotta figure out, and I change really often, because again, they don't know what they're doing. They're just building, and that thing is just, oh, by the way, look at this side effect. All right, so who reads? Read the first one.
Sure. Transformation Bank, a leading multinational financial institution, is exploring the integration of generative AI to enhance customer service, automate fraud detection, and streamline investment strategies.
Okay, does that make sense? Is it pretty straightforward?
Yep.
Yeah, all right, you wanna read the next one?
The bank plans to deploy AI-driven chatbots, predictive analytics for risk assessment, and automated financial advising tools. However, the leadership team is concerned about ethical implications, regulatory compliance, and potential risks associated with GenAI deployment.
Is it reasonable that leadership is concerned about all of this? Yeah, I mean, we know it's a new technology, hallucinations, bias, all this ugly stuff, but on the other hand, it's all that potential. Questions on the use case. It is a bank, it's want to get into GenAI. There's tons of these companies out there now as we speak. Some of them, I wasn't one of them, who started in the beginning on this, but now everybody's moving that direction.
So a quick analog here, right? We've talked about sort of the connection between the investment all the way to the investor and who are the players involved. So here we would be talking about a fiduciary responsibility instead of person to investor, right? Financial advisor to investor, an automated tool that gives you that advice.
Yes. And pretty clear, we talk about the difference between a chatbot and a GenAI, right? Here we say AI-driven chatbot, so it's GenAI-driven chatbot. Who reminds me the difference between those two?
The old AI is just you know what you get in and what you get out, but GenAI is like you know what you put in, but you don't know what happens with that data, and you don't know what's going to be.
And you don't need to map it. You don't need to have all these trees and a bunch of products out there. So it's basically you tell them what to optimize it for, and it's gonna go at it really hard. Yeah? So we know where we're going, right? All right. One more clue. So these are the questions. Who reads the questions? Yes.
How might the integration of GenAI impact traditional business operations and customers?
Okay. Read it again. Slow. One more time. So
how might the integration of GenAI impact traditional business operations and customers?
okay. So we have backend and we have front end. So we have what happened with the bank, with the advising, with the trading, and what happened with the relationship with the user. Yes? So you have impact in both sides. How's that gonna happen? Knowing what we know. Thank you. Second one.
What are potential applications of GenAI in financial services, and what ethical dilemmas could arise from their use?
Let's read it one more time. Make sure everybody gets.
What are potential applications of GenAI in financial services, and what ethical dilemmas could arise from their use?
So you have backend. How can we improve operations? We have users. And then from that, where do we deploy it? Remember, capital is very scarce. Bandwidth is very scarce. So you, as somebody who's advising leadership, you're going to say, look, I know GenAI is good at this, this, and this, and it's not good at this, this, and that. So what is your team and why? So don't give me a laundry list. Oh, customer service. Yeah, why? Why there, and what are the ethical implications? Questions on this, and I'm going to give you 10 or 15 minutes, Professor.
Yeah.
Yeah? So I'm gonna put my little alarm. Questions before we start the exercise, and we'll be walking around answering questions.
Let's do 10.
10 minutes. Yes, so, all right, have fun. So break in teams of 3, move the chairs, do whatever you need to. Oh.
Okay, so augment the integration of GenAI and traditional business.
organic
Lower the human interaction with costs in terms of salaries for operations.
I think there's gonna be a lot of like, let's say you don't know how to code something.
You have a question?
You can like write this.
No, by the way, your professor is out. Use GPT if you have it.
Finance bro. I don't wanna do this.
It might
anymore.
make
Like,
business,
make a
traditional
fucking
business
agent that does
operations
it for me
faster
forever.
paced.
You post it yourself.
When it can generate answers
Built your own
things quicker than people might not
That's
use
some
it.
weirdly specific thing that you need to control, assuming you write the instructions.
Could be biased towards different.
That's what I think the main thing is. I
But
know
what are
people are
some
different things. There's a bunch of startups for it, but like I've noticed those
And they have a
big
fiduciary
shifts towards
responsibility.
almost like startups to facilitate individual people. Like no, they call it like no code stuff, but say okay, you want to build a
It's a
tool
sensitive
here.
topic,
This
like,
is like a little.
People care about their money a
Like
lot,
every
they trust
large
banks. I mean,
thing
they
is
usually
going
don't.
to use it, and then you can just write in the chat and then create an agent yourself and tell it, okay, go into this application and then do this. And then you pay like $2 a month or something, so you're talking, now you've got your own tools you made yourself, so they decide it's all in your browser.
Depends on how they're going to incorporate
And
GenAI into
potential
business
applications, well, I can give you one.
I think it's just recommendation based.
But like, I mean, the thing is, there's like a million of these, and like, you literally just like anything you don't wanna do, if you ever encounter any task you don't wanna do, you probably are.
To streamline workflow, it makes total sense.
That's kind of reassuring,
Like taking these communities
I don't know, like manual inputting
updating asset allocations, which is like an AI could do all
You
that.
can do that,
It
but
would be, it would present like dilemmas. It would
Yeah,
probably
so what
be
do we say,
things
like a
like
trust
housing.
factor for the first one?
I will say though, with customer service, I think it
Customer
can be a
know
bit iffy,
they can
because like you
trust
said,
Yeah, I think that's one place where just doesn't work.
customer service is like the
I
bare
think
minimum.
at this stage, the safest thing you
No
can
one
do
wants to engage
is
with
don't,
AI
like, the
when it
less
comes to
generation you make it do, the better. Really good at
Yeah, it's
scraping.
like some of the where it's like the
So like if
automated
you have an example,
it's not like
for example,
example,
you need to
instead of
answer a
yeah,
question
what
in
if
class,
instead of like
right?
having a meeting with
Instead of
your
just giving it
advisor,
the question and having
you
it
log
generate
on to
an
like
answer,
an AI chat
what you
bot
should do is you should go to the class files, upload those, with some, tell it to
But I
edit
feel like
for you.
it's more convenient for
And
purposes
then have it only use
questions,
that
you
to
know.
answer questions. So like if you do it that way, you don't have to
but
worry
they
about
should have like
generating
a
shit
point where they
that's
start to
relevant,
organize like real
correct.
in-person meetings.
So
Like
people
it's just like the
use
first
that
couple
for
of questions, and then they're like, okay,
finance,
assess
for
whether that's
example.
something that's
Like
necessary.
if you, I don't know, if your company builds out specific data sets, and then you just like use that as a tool, you'll never have to worry about it like doing. Yeah, because I mean, these data sets are so big, it's like, it's good for like general questions, is there anyone, specific stuff. It's way better if you just literally give it some massive thing to parse through, and then you say, use this in this question. So,
Sorry, I think I personally think it's just gonna, take away some of the tasks.
oh yeah, no, I don't
I feel like that's gonna be the biggest impact on traditional business operations.
Oh, and another thing, this is a startup ecosystem, because like, there's so much like
intelligence is
crap you don't have to wade through anymore. Like you don't have to like learn how to set up like a backend. Like, there's literally like a website called Bold AI, where you can type in build me a tool that does X, and it'll literally code your entire back end for you in like 2 minutes. You can watch it do it. And it's kind of scary because like I know for a fact like 3 years ago you needed like a dev to help you and they spent like 2 weeks doing it, figuring out what works best, and now it's literally 5 minutes. And all you have to do is like what it will do is it will literally go to these like it's like a mishmash of different services. It will go and buy them for you and then
Whoever
work
made
with
AI
creative
was
for you.
like a white man.
So stuff like that is like definitely and then for like compliance stuff, you're like some like super industry or whatever that's not wrong and we don't AI bothers like I don't know why you'd be making a company.
I think ultimately though,
but
like,
positive,
I think that they don't really have a choice. They
I
want
would
to scale their business and they want to keep up.
Oh yeah, I mean like I've seen people generate like entire like agreements and obviously they won't tell you. I've heard people have done that, so it's not a terrible idea.
Michael, what do you think? Because then you'll give us some.
In terms of
people
the second question, I guess specifically with like some customers, if for example you're like in a bank, right, and you're in a kind of a sell side M&A process, if these analysts just put it into I don't know these GenAI chatbots or something,
No, I just mean like even
side
if
could
in many cases AI
then that
replaces
just
a lot of
affects
human
how they make
functions, like the value of human interaction is still going to be something that
I kind of
will want to.
Funny enough, I've encountered
Sort of
one
like
of these
how brick and
already.
mortar retail still has to be around, even though
I'm
e-commerce
trying
is
to
the
build a
future.
tool for the
You know,
bank
like
I'm
there
at
has
right
to be
now,
that
which is
touch
like largely
and
just
that
so we don't have to deal with those phone calls anymore. And one of the big things is like we access the Zoom transcript data. It's like, okay, how do you do that without like, because there are ways you can do it where you're like not in the meeting, if you get my drift. And there's one, investors hate being recorded because they love to make like handshake promises a lot and then not all of their, not to like throw shade or anything, this is kind of how they operate. But if you have a transcription service in there, they get very antsy. So it's like, and since this tool is not meant to be a transcription service, it's meant to pull specific data, you can kind of play around with that, like, well, okay, we're not actually storing the transcript, we delete it. We just grab the data and we like grab the specific things.
Oh no, I think that's totally.
So that's an
I still
ethical
think
dilemma
that like
I've encountered with that. It's like, how do you
people are still gonna want to interact.
make sure people know what's being collected and ideally make it so they're okay with it or interested themselves in using it.
We've evolved to monetize.
Does Zoom record a transcript or do you use another AI?
Like we want to know
So
everything
this is
about
actually
every
interesting
human.
because like
Doesn't matter
we-
where they're
there's-
from or their network.
their
or
transcript
their
service is not
family
that good.
name. We just want to know what you like.
So we had to use a
And
separate
that is
one.
money right there.
These
It's
guys
really-
charge an arm and a leg. I can't. I if it weren't for them, bro, we could offer like 100 hours a month for like $5, which like no one's ever, unless you're a banker who spends like all your day in calls, you're not gonna hit 100 hours. So and like for $5 is nothing. But because they charge $1 an hour, our overhead is just like trash. It's like, I mean, we found ways to cut it down, but it's like
Now it's just more
it's difficult. But it gives us a bunch of other like services. Like it doesn't just connect with Zoom. It does Google Meet. It does.
How do you go about notifying, I don't know if this is scaling.
No, I can tell you.
How do you like tell people, investors that you're recording information in those?
So there's two things. These are kind of some things we play around with. See, like okay, like because my thought is we want to store a transcript, but not so that like we can record exactly what happened. The way it works is
Oh my
you
God,
basically
it's
write
so
a really long
valid.
prompt and tell it like okay, I need to grab these like specific things. Like I want you to grab check
I don't know why they made it like that.
Grab the focus, revenue, whatever, and then we'll export that to
No, like
an output like
Professor,
Excel
we have a
file.
quick question for you.
And it will create a table for you, and then you can export that into just about anything.
Okay.
And it's completely asynchronous updates. You literally end the meeting, it's all done. You don't do anything.
How are you ensuring that this information that you're putting into the AI isn't being used?
Synchronous.
Or you're creating the
Synchronous with camera.
Well, we actually, that was our initial use,
Okay, but
was we
not
didn't
in
wanna
the
get too
class.
crazy, we just
No,
used
you
a lot,
have them in class.
because
Oh,
they
but
have
it's
it in
during
their,
the
they don't.
It's during
It's
class
during the
time.
class time, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we save the,
So.
and we sit in and.
Well,
Fiona
you
was
know,
just confused
and then
by
what we'll do is
asynchronous,
we'll have it a bot.
Oh, yeah,
He was trying to get
So they'll know there's something
Okay.
incorrect, that is like a transcription.
So
Yeah, no,
it's
it's-
synchronous.
And to
asynchronous.
add an extra layer
He was
of
saying I should bring
visibility,
my
we can
notes
actually let them
forward.
Yeah,
request
Place them
like,
online.
like,
In class,
Yeah.
bring
send
them.
them fields.
All right, we're wrapping up, 20 seconds, are we good, everybody? All right, so let's start from my left. Team one, names, and then tell us your story.
I'm Sarah. Something we were talking about a lot is how like when you have like a list of like how like ChatGPT or like AI can be like wrong, information with like health, politics, and like finance. Often like there's a lot of misinformation surrounding that. So we talked a lot about how like that could like then impact like financial services and like giving information as well as like fiduciary duty and just like that kind of element with ethics and how that can probably apply with customers.
Yeah, we just talked a bit about that and talked a little bit about how the integration would be helpful in enabling like makes it highly personalized interaction and also obviously automates a lot of things. That's very helpful to us.
Excellent. Any other concerns on any ethical dilemmas besides those that you think pops out? Those?
I feel like the main one I think of like ethical dilemmas is like how do you know like the value of the information you're giving the customer?
Good. And you are fiduciary responsible of that, so awesome. Give them a. All right. You guys want to tackle next? You want to go? What did you find? Question one. There's no right or wrong answer, so no worries.
Yeah, we kind of explained the same thing. Kind of felt like with the integration of GenAI, businesses are gonna have to like integrate ways to, I guess, make sure it's being used ethically and correct. And we explained how there can be positive impacts, like how you were saying with doctors, for example, how it can allow them to have more empathy and I guess communicate and connect better with their patients.
Any ethical dilemmas, any challenges that from all the stuff we saw?
I think that one of the challenges that we talked about is kind of like the overdependency and like not really like fact checking like the sources that like GenAI might give you, and so it would be good to have like some human intervention just to like look over like the information that you kind of like what Taylor is saying, like so that you make sure that it's like accurate and you're not just using it because it's giving it to you, but because you really understand the value of what the information is.
Awesome. Yeah, next thing. You guys wanna go next?
Yeah, so we said that AI can like impact traditional business operations such as like managing like more manual work like scheduling and kind of organizing that on its own so you don't have to like go in and do that yourself, and then also like customer service like 24/7 accessibility to help if like someone has a question or like they don't know what to do, having AI kind of take care of that 24/7 would be helpful. And another idea we had is like personal customer recommendations, like maybe you're on a website shopping and like AI is kind of picking up on your data, like what you're clicking on, what you're looking at, and offering personalized recommendations to you based on like your preferences.
Awesome.
And then I think for the like main ethical dilemmas that we talked about was kind of just like data bias that could exist like with customer service. One thing that I found like interesting was not really having to do with the customer, but like business operations related to hiring employees and using like AI to like go over resumes or like stuff like that. Like there could be data bias and like if there's like a historically like if there's maybe like a type of like person that like is usually hired, like if there could be bias towards like that type of application or that type of resume.
And it has happened a lot, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it in Amazon, we've seen it basically just steering jobs to men or steering jobs to this and steering jobs to that, which even if they identify the names so they don't know their sex, or they can pick up and look for traces, the schools you went, the stuff, and basically create all that. All right.
Yeah, we talked a lot about similar stuff, how it'll change customer service. We also talked about how it will lower fixed costs for business operations through like taking on less employees because you can kind of automate a lot of things that weren't in the past, such as like the need for call centers. We also said that a lot of operations will be streamlined and made a lot more efficient with GenAI, and especially as it gets more sophisticated. From the customer perspective, we talked a lot about like recommendations and how those can be more, and also like customers when they're going to a business, they can like use AI to like specify what they want to get out. Like if they have like more general questions, they can become more specific. So yeah.
And ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, so certain ethical dilemmas, or first off, for like potential applications, we kind of thought of maybe in the sense of a financial advisor, like an assistant role that probably deals with more menial tasks, and then a client could speak to their advisor in person, or like to build an actual relationship with them. But replacing an assistant with an AI chatbot might, cause some ethical dilemmas in the fiduciary duty that it serves, being non-biased and whatnot, and that could arise with.
We're not too far from it. We're building one of those. Imagine you have an agent as a customer, and your financial advisor has an agent. So I don't know when was the last time you met with your advisor, but you spent 15 minutes telling them, oh, this is what I want, these are my goals, this is my risk tolerance. Why? My agent knows all. So in theory, my agent should talk to your agent. Before you and I meet in person, all the legwork is done. Now you as a financial advisor, you know exactly where I am in life, where my daughter goes to school, the car I just bought, the loan, so you'll be able to engage on what's useful. Does that make sense? Awesome.
For us, we talked first about kind of potential applications where kind of similarly streamlining back office work, no need to employ kind of the similar workers to perform analytics. They might be able to come up with a better quality analysis and be able to kind of predict certain trends better than a human would, as well as providing kind of a more in-depth, for example, kind of search or due diligence offerings like AlphaSense or like stuff to kind of like help Preqin as well. But then that kind of, we were talking also about the long-term range of the AI impact.
Yeah, another thing we talked about was, from sort of an employee perspective, and like especially as we're all going into like the job market and we're trying to optimize to get hired in different jobs, like I feel like AI, if it keeps progressing at the rate it's progressing, it's gonna kind of flip the paradigm where like in the past having really, really strong technical skills was very highly prized. Like being able to code and do math, like very high value at financial institutions and technology companies. And I feel like now what's going to set you apart is your EQ and your ability to relate to customers and other people in the industry, and like those technical skills are going to become less and less important over time. And so we're talking about what that means for businesses and customers.
A great point. You're gonna have your own quant.
Yeah.
He's gonna do all this work.
Yeah.
He's gonna prepare all these reports
No more big
and
back
tell you.
office.
And now you need
Yeah.
to build a relationship.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what I have. This is what my agent talking to your agent. These are the investment. And can I trust you? Let me look at your eyes. And the answer is yes. And so you don't need to rely somebody preparing a report 1 week, 2 weeks, biases, all that things. Awesome. And dilemmas? Yes.
Sorry, at the same time, though, on this point, you gotta be the the person in the loop
Yes.
that understands if you get a bad result, right?
Yeah,
Guys, is it possible to beat the market 20 years in a row or be in the top quintile of performance?
No.
Not possible. So if you get that result,
Very different.
then we gotta look at it a little bit deeper, go to a different model, train it differently, do more shots.
But what we discussed, right? You gotta know what goes in and what coming out. That gotta make sense for you. So that you do need to develop. Doing the math, doing the stats, not that much. All right, and ethical dilemmas?
Well, we sort of talked about how people pick a bank because they trust the bank and they like probably have spoken to someone and developed some sort of trust there. So switching to an AI like chatbot, for example, like because customer service was one of the things they were going to, implement within GenAI, might be just like a bit shocking. Like normally speaking to a person and then switching to a bot that's not giving the same quality of answers, maybe, could be a dilemma.
Awesome.
I think the other thing we talked about too is just, especially when it comes to financial services, like people are entrusting you with their money, and that has massive consequences. And so if an AI like hallucinates and places a bad trade or like does something weird, the consequence of that is potentially someone losing their life savings or who knows. So it's just a lot of potential risk. And then the issue with that is like if a human does that, there's someone you can go fire, and say, okay, we got rid of the problem, like this person's gone. You can't really do that with an AI.
agent,
It's
yeah.
just like there's no blame to place anywhere.
That's a great point. I don't know if you guys are familiar. I encourage you to follow. OpenAI just launched an AI agent called Operator. What's neat about Operator is has the human in the loop. Critical decisions is not gonna let you do it. It's gonna ask you first. So now they have it on very non-critical issues. You guys are talking finance, as you mentioned, is very critical. That thing make the bad decision. Who's to blame? The advantage of Operator is you can today reserve a hotel, you can reserve a flight, buy concert, do all these little things which are not critically important, but are important. But the moment money is going to get exchanged, it's going to go back to you and ask, do you really want me to release the credit card? So I'm going to ask you, give me your credit card because the agent has it. So you have that, you are that human in the loop. So in the case of finance, as you mentioned, you as the advisor are the gatekeeper in telling your GenAI what to do, what not to do. Awesome. Yay. Last team or two teams more?
One team left.
One team. All right, big team.
Alright, I'll go. So how might the integration of GenAI impact traditional business operations in customers? Well, it's definitely gonna decrease costs, like you said. It'll also, you wanna make sure that the people operating the business aren't too reliant on the models that they use, because they might be providing answers that the customers could receive on their own. You don't wanna get rid of that critical thinking, at least until we reach EQ point. And do you remember any other points we made?
Oh, yeah, I can say this more from the startup side of things, but it's like so much easier now to make a startup than it was even 4 years ago, because you now no longer really need a lot of like front end work done. Like if you have an idea, for example, you could go find an AI tool that will make your AI tool for you, like literally with just a prompt, and it's like, it is that quick. And then also in terms of like legal stuff, all of the things you need to do to set up a business, you can figure that out literally in a day. So I think that's like probably one of the biggest impacts, is that there's gonna be a lot of people who can make tools for their work that they might not have been able to do before. I mean, people who can't even code, but just know what they want the tool to do, and they can tell an AI exactly what it needs to do for them and pretty much optimize their own workflow and not have to do work anymore. For the second thing, about like ethical dilemmas, that's a little harder. It's more specific to like what you're trying to use it for, but I think a general one is, especially in finance, like privacy. If you're working on some sort of big deal or something that has, you can make a profit off of it if you gave that information away. It's definitely, you don't want that being trained off of or being seen really by any AI tool. So I think you're definitely gonna wanna have like some sort of model that promises, and I mean like maybe with some sort of third-party vetting that they actually don't train off of your data that you use on it. So I know Claude claims that. I hope they don't train off of it, but the temptation's got to be there.
So 2 comments on that. So the first one, on how easy it is for you guys to start a startup.